Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sahada Alolo, and I am the president of the Ottawa Muslim Women Organization. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. We would like to open with an opening prayer, and we are very excited and happy that our Imam, even though he's very busy today, I was just at another event with him and we rushed here, and he has to go to the AGM, so we would allow him, our respected Imam Ziad of Satnapian Muslim Community Center, to start us off with supplication.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May peace and blessing of God Almighty be upon all of us today. May we have peace in our own hearts. Only then we would have peace in our families, and only then we would have peace in our communities. There is no peace outside if there is no peace from within. God Almighty told us in the Quran, be just, or being just is closest to being righteous. So be just, for it is being closest to being righteous. Let us all pray to our Creator, God Almighty. Oh Lord, thank you for all the blessings, so many of them that you have bestowed upon us, including this beautiful organization, Ottawa Muslim Women's Organization. We ask of you to make this organization the pillar of the community and the society, our Creator. Oh Lord, we humbly beg of you to bless us with the essential faith, pure heart, and good character. Strengthen our character and help us to be change that we want to see in the world. Please forgive us for all our shortcomings, hidden or open, big or small, the ones done out of ignorance or ones done out of intent. Oh Lord, bring into our lives peace, peace with ourselves, peace with others, and peace with the environment in which we live. Oh Lord, help us to understand that we are all brothers and sisters, or sisters and brothers in humanity, with the same needs, hopes, fears, and aspirations. Oh Lord, help us to understand that acceptance of other and respect for them is the sign of meaningful faith and the highest level of strength, and then desire for revenge is the first sign of weakness of faith and character. Oh Lord, help us to build Canada that would be the model of pluralism in the world, an example to others, and help us to be the best and most attuned and faithful citizens of this nation. Oh Lord, if we forget you, please do not forget us. Amen.
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 Thank you.
Thank you so much, Imam Zia. We know you have to go, so thank you for that beautiful opening. It certainly centers us for our event today, so we do appreciate that. For those of you who have just joined in, Imam Ziad has another event to attend to, so he needed to do the opening supplication and leave. Again, my name is Sahada Alolo, and I am the president of the Ottawa Muslim Women Organization, and I have the honor to be the MC today. So before we start, I would like to, the Ottawa Muslim Women's Organization would like to acknowledge that we live, work, and play, among others, in Ottawa on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, whose presence here reaches back to time immemorial. We are indeed grateful to have the opportunity to be present in this territory. Ottawa Muslim Women Organization acknowledges the historical oppression of lands, cultures, and the original peoples in what we now know as Canada. Our organization would like to take this opportunity to work in solidarity towards the healing and decolonizing journey. Could you please mute yourselves? So Ottawa Muslim Women Organization acknowledges the historical oppression of lands, cultures, and original peoples in what we now know as Canada. Our organization would like to take this opportunity to commit to work in solidarity towards the healing and decolonizing journey. We honor the long history of the Algonquins welcoming many nations to this beautiful territory. As settler immigrants to this country, we acknowledge we continue as immigrants to benefit from history of broken treaties by the Canadian government, the historical and colonial violence inflicted upon Indigenous peoples. We reckon openly with our responsibility as settler immigrants to this land and its original stewards, that we as immigrant settlers, we are complicit in structures of white supremacy while striving to be better allies with the Indigenous peoples of this land. So thank you so much for coming. That is OMW's land acknowledgement. And we are indeed grateful that we have our Indigenous communities that we continue to work with. Before we have our guest speakers take the floor, I'd like for those of you who don't really know much about our organization to briefly give you a brief background. So Ottawa Muslim Women Organization is a charitable organization that was founded in September 2001. We are 20 years, we are in our 20th year anniversary. And unfortunately, this organization came as a result of the unfortunate incident of 9/11. Our funders at that time felt the need to change the negative narratives about Muslims worldwide as a result of the 9/11 incident. Hence, about 50 dedicated ladies from diverse origins decided to form an organization with the sole objective of building bridges with people of all faiths and groups in the community at large, as well as addressing misconceptions about Islam and the negative image and status of Muslim women. The Ottawa Muslim Women Organization is committed to working together to establish mutual respect, acceptance, understanding of all cultures, traditions, faiths, and religions. The OMW reaches out to fellow Muslims and with all other Muslim organizations in Ottawa and Canada with the purpose of the common good of all. Our membership has expanded to include both men and women and from people of all various groups. So after today's event, if you are inclined to become members of Ottawa Women's Organization, please donate $25 and it will be going towards the event today and also towards becoming a member of Ottawa Muslim Women Organization. Before I go on to why we are here today, please permit me to introduce my colleagues at the OMW, whom I am honored to be working with. Here we have Nazira Tareen, who needs no introduction. She is the founder and past president of the organization. If you're here, you can just wave so people will know who you are. And we have Dr. Safa Fuda, who is our honorary board member. And I always call her the wisdom behind everything we do. We defer to her for any kind of wisdom we need in the direction where we want to go. So Dr. Safa Fuda, if you are here, you can just wave your hand. We have Ayan Duale, who is the vice president of Ottawa Muslim Women Organization. Ayan, if you are here, please wave so people can see you. We have Dr. Monia Mazik, who also needs no introduction, and she's here with us. And I have to give her credit because she's the brain behind the organizing of all of this. So thank you, Monia, for everything that you do in the background to make this a possibility.
Thank you, Zahara.
And we have Neveen Bayelta, who is also a joint secretary with Monia. And as you can see on that screen, there are three of them there with Auntie Nazira in her home, helping her to be able to navigate the world of digital. So thank you, Neveen. And next I have Sister Hamida Hanani, who is our money woman. She's our treasurer, making sure that every money that we get goes to good use. And her joint, so Sister Hamida, welcome, thank you.
Thank you.
And I have May Jibara, who is also the joint treasurer. May, if you are here, could you please wave so people can see you? Thank you so much for all the work you do. And we have Uzma Khan, who is also our communications and outreach. She's the one who sort of does all of our outreach and communications. And her joint person is Emin Trugut Neri. Emin, if you are here, I know you were not feeling well earlier on. Yeah, there she is. Thank you so much. So that's the brain behind Ottawa Muslim Women Organization. We are made up of different women and we all come from various countries. We are very international. I call us the UN Ottawa Muslim Women Organization in Canada. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Sada.
As you all know, this event is being recorded and we ask permission that we be able to share it later on to our members who were not able to attend. If you do not want to be seen, you could turn off your video. So without further ado, I will start with welcoming Brittany Matthews, who is amongst us today. And she is representing Cindy Blackstock, who is the Executive Director of First Nations Child Family Caring Society. And I will read a brief bio for Brittany, if you permit me. So Brittany Matthews is Métis and a member of the Métis Nation of Alberta. Her family more recently comes from St. Paul, Alberta, with kinship relations from St. Francis Xavier in Manitoba. Brittany is passionate about the role that human rights, most especially the rights of First Nations, Métis, and Inuit children and youth play in achieving justice. She believes that this can happen through ensuring an ethical standard of relations between generations of First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples. Brittany has an honors Bachelor's of Arts in Indigenous Studies and a minor in Conflict Studies and Human Rights from the University of Ottawa. Today's 100% of the proceeds that will be received as a result of this campaign that we are launching will be donated to Brittany's organization. So please be generous. Thank you. Brittany, please take the floor.
Tanse, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It's a true honor to be here representing the Caring Society and Dr. Cindy Blackstock. I am speaking to you today from the unceded Algonquin territory, of which I'm a guest. So I wanted to speak briefly about the Caring Society and what we do. So we are a national nonprofit, and we work to, we stand with First Nations young people and families. The key thing that we know at the Caring Society is that equity and culture are integral to a child's well-being. Unfortunately, since Confederation, First Nations children and families receive services that are funded significantly less than what other Canadians would receive. This discrimination means that First Nations children often receive less or no services and supports, like safe and comfy schools and access to culturally relevant healthcare. So guided by the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action, which is a roadmap to redressing the harms of the Indian residential school system. And this was gifted to all Canadians by residential school survivors. So guided by the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action, the Caring Society works to ensure the well-being of First Nations young people through educational initiatives and public policy campaigns. So part of this work entails calling on the Canadian government to fully implement the Spirit Bear Plan. The Spirit Bear Plan calls on the government to fully comply with all rulings by the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal. And the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal in 2016 found that Canada is discriminating against First Nations children and their families, and has ordered Canada to immediately cease its discriminatory funding of First Nations families. The Caring Society also works alongside First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and non-Indigenous young people to provide reconciliation-based education resources. So these resources are aimed at young children primarily and their families, so that we can all understand the contemporary realities of First Nations young people and how we can all work together to transform the relationship between non-Indigenous and Indigenous peoples in Canada. So it's by standing alongside caring individuals like yourselves that we will be able to ensure that First Nations young people can have equitable opportunities to grow up safely at home, be healthy, celebrate their language and culture, and be proud of who they are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brittany. You know, as you know, from the beginning, when I read the land acknowledgements, we as settler immigrants, you know, we are in solidarity with you. We feel the pain. We cannot say that we know exactly how the pain is, but we feel it, and we are working side by side with you. And that is why this event is very, very important to us. And we hope that we can do a little bit on our part to be able to raise funds to support the incredible work that you are doing in the community. So thank you very much for taking the time to be with us today. I know we have, I see Teresa Kavna. Please, if you're here, you can wave so people can see you. Teresa Kavna, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. She is the Bay Ward counselor. So thank you for taking the time to be with us. We appreciate your presence. We were supposed to have Elder Verna open us with an opening and a first song, but unfortunately she's not here yet. Monia, is that correct?
Yes, Elder Claudette Commanda told me that she will join us at 3. Is that right, Elder Claudette?
Good afternoon. I just sent Elder Verna a message that she's on the agenda for 2:45, and if she can join us as soon as possible. So I sent her that message. And she thought she was on for 3 o'clock, but I told her no at 2:45. So I'm hoping she joins us soon, but she will join us.
Yeah, so we will move on, and when she comes out, just fit her back into the agenda. So
very well what everyone is saying, but how do I get in to say mine?
Could you please mute yourself? Thank you so much. So the reason why we are here, we are so looking forward to Claudette giving us a brief history, and so we can have a bit of understanding of the Indigenous culture. So before I call Elder Claudette to talk, I would like to read a brief bio about Professor Claudette Commanda. So Professor Claudette Commanda is an Algonquin Anishinaabe from Kitigan Zibi Anishinaabe First Nation, located in the province of Quebec. An alumni of the University of Ottawa Faculty of Common Law and Faculty of Arts. Claudette has dedicated the last 35 years promoting First Nations people, history, culture, and rights in various capacities as a University of Ottawa student, professor, member, and chair of the Aboriginal Education Council, and via public speaking events. She is a professor for the University of Ottawa's Institute of Women's Studies, Faculty of Education, Faculty of Law, and the Aboriginal Studies program, teaching courses on First Nations women, Native education, First Nations people and history, Indigenous traditions, and decolonization. In addition, she is the executive director of the First Nations Confederacy of Cultural Education Centers, a national organization which protects and promotes First Nations culture, languages, and traditional knowledge. She is inducted into the Common Law Honor Society, served 2 terms on the Board of Governors for the First Nations University of Canada, and 3 terms on the Kitigan Zibi Band Council. In 2017, Claudette is the First Nation appointed elder in residence for the Faculty of Law, University of Ottawa, and the first person of a First Nation heritage to be appointed to the Board of Governors for the University of Ottawa. She is the Special Advisor on Reconciliation for the Dean, Faculty of Law. Claudette is a proud mother of 4 and a grandmother to 10 beautiful grandchildren. In March 2020, Claudette received the 2020 Inspire Award for Culture, Heritage, and Spirituality. Help me, it is my great honor to welcome Elder Claudette Commanda to today's event.
Thank you, Zaheda, for that beautiful introduction. Thank you. It pleases my heart to be here with your beautiful community. It is a beautiful day today. I begin by acknowledging that I am on the territory, the homeland of my ancestors, and I say, Chi miigwej kakina, kibija yegoma Anishinaabe ki, bijajikoma Anishinaabe ki umama weneniwak. I welcome each and every one of you beautiful people to this ancestral homeland of my ancestors, the nation of the Algonquin people, the homeland that has been entrusted onto us since time immemorial, and the homeland that we will ensure will be your everlasting for our children. I thank you, Sahira. I thank you for your acknowledgement of the Algonquin land and the Algonquin people. Chimiigwej. That land acknowledgement is so important. That is one of the most fundamental laws in our spirituality and in our culture, to acknowledge the homeland of First Nations people. And then once that land acknowledgement is given, then we welcome you. We welcome you into our territory. So that's really important. It's a responsibility to give that land acknowledgement. It's also a responsibility to give the welcome. I am a First Nation woman. I am of the Algonquin people. And I also have a responsibility to acknowledge the homeland of other First Nations people. And I asked their permission to come into their territory, and they welcome me into their territory. So it's really, it pleases my heart when those who have come to live upon Algonquin territory, that they acknowledge the homelands of my ancestors and of my people, because it's not only an affirmation, it's also a reaffirmation, a recognition, an acceptance that First Peoples have always been here. And in my case, I'm speaking about the Algonquin people because I am in my territory. I'm joining you here today from Ottawa, and it is the ancestral homeland of the Algonquin people. So again, I express to you the Ottawa Muslim Women Organization and to the Muslim community and to all citizens of Ottawa, thank you for that acknowledgement. It makes me feel that our people are no longer invisible, because at a time we were invisible. We didn't create invisibility. That invisibility was created by Europe when they came to plant themselves on our territory. And there are times even today that they make First Nations people feel invisible, but we'll get to that later in a moment when I speak about culture. I also want to thank Elder Nazira. Thank you for your work that you are doing and raising awareness of your community and building those bridges. So thank you, Elder. And I'm very honored to have accepted your invitation to come and speak to your community. I want to thank the Ottawa Muslim Women's Association. Thank you for inviting me into your community and to share my knowledge, to share my experience as who I am as a First Nation woman, as an Algonquin woman, as a Anishinaabe Ikwe of the Omama Wenene, the Algonquin people. And I want to thank Iman for the beautiful prayer that he shared, which is just so beautiful. Like prayer is so beautiful. We have a word in our language for prayer, and our word is Imiyawin. And that word means to chant. And think about that. Just think about it. Indeed, when we say our prayer, it is a song of our heart to the Creator. We call God Gishiminado. Everyone has their ways of their belief, their spiritual belief, those religious practices, and you have a name for how you refer to God. For us, as Anishinaabe people, we refer to him as Gishiminado, the one and only sovereign, the one who has created all. And each and every time we lift our prayer, it is a song of our heart, and we give honor to Creator and for all of his blessings as we honor our ancestors and as we honor all our relatives that continue to be in that have gone on into that spirit world, and all those spirit helpers that the Creator's created to help us each and every day of our lives in this physical world and also in that spiritual world. And in our prayer, we acknowledge our Mother, the Earth, as we acknowledge our grandmother, the Moon, and our grandfather, the Sun, and all of creation. And prayer is so beautiful, and it's so important because it speaks of love, which is so important, love and kindness. And our Elder Verna is not with us at this moment, but I also acknowledge Elder Verna for the beautiful prayer that she will give in those songs, because our songs are also our prayers. So really important that we're together in this circle, although we are seeing one another in these itty bitty little squares, right? So it's just too bad we cannot meet in person, because when we're together in person, we feel that energy of one another, right? And we share that uplifting. But I am grateful that we have these opportunities through technology to gather. So what can I tell you about First Nations culture? And I know I could go on and on and on. So, but somebody's going to have to give me some, time here. And I'm not sure if you would like, I think you do have time for questions and answers, right?
Yes.
So I can speak for about 30 minutes, and then later on I'll have those. Okay, good to know. All right. But I still need somebody to tell me, okay, you got 5 minutes left, or you got 1 minute left, and then you're going to cut me off. Okay. So, but that's all right. Okay. So I'm here today to share First Nations culture. And how do we do 30 minutes? 30 minutes is not a whole lot of time, but I'm going to try to condense it as much as possible. So I'm going to speak to you from an Algonquin perspective, because that's who I am. And I'm going to speak to you about First Nations culture, but we're going to start first and foremost that First Nations people are not Inuit and are not Métis. Métis are not First Nation, Inuit are not First Nation. We are very different people. So I am sharing with you First Nations people. The Inuit certainly can share, and they have their voice, and so do the Métis people. They have their voice, and they share their knowledge as well. What can I say? First Nation culture, First Nations people, we always start with the land and we start with the people. There are many First Nation people in Canada, but not only in Canada, in the United States as well. We consider the continent of North America as Turtle Island, and many nations, many tribes, those first people that were placed on Turtle Island by the Creator. We were gifted with this land called Turtle Island, and we are nations of people. And there are many nations of those original people with ancestral, the original land, with original languages, with original thoughts, with original beliefs, with our spiritualities and our creation stories, our culture and our traditions. But we're going to bring it into Canada here. So in Canada, there are 634 First Nations. And from those 634 First Nations, they fall in 10 language families, linguistic families. There are 10 of them. And we are very diverse people, very diverse. The Algonquin people are very diverse from the Mohawk people. And that diversity you will see in our languages, in our traditions, in our lands. So very, very diverse. But we have commonalities. And our commonalities, those common elements, is that we are the first peoples of this land. We have you see the similarities and the collective in our worldview, land, ancestors, creator. So there are diverse elements as well as there are common elements. And we respect one another's territories, again, gifted with land. And we need the land. We need the land to survive as the first people. The Algonquin people, our land base is very vast, very vast. Our lands are not only on those reserves which were lands set aside, created by colonial Europe and Canadian law, Canadian government, to remove us from the freedoms of our ancestral lands and place us on these tiny little parcels of land called reserves. Again, it was for the purpose of assimilation, genocide. You know, most people say assimilation, and we know what assimilation means, and that is to turn us into something different. But we have been saying, and now Canadians are realizing that it was much more than assimilation. It was genocide, genocide, to take away everything of who we are as the first and original peoples of this land. Take away our land, take away our languages, taken away our spirit, our spirituality, and our governance structures. We had everything in place to survive, and we have been surviving here in this physical world and on these lands for tens of thousands of years, and what we call since time immemorial, because we know there is no time concept with the Creator. Time immemorial. We were created here in these lands. We have our creation stories. And one of the most profound proofs that we are created in this land called Turtle Island is language, our languages. The Algonquin people, as a matter of fact, any of the other First Nations people, they cannot go anywhere in the world to find their language, but here in these homelands of Turtle Island. Unlike others who come to make Canada or even the United States, they come to settle and come to make this their homes, whether they're French or English or Italian or Chinese or whatever the language is. They have a home country to return to. Should they start to lose their language, they can return home to their mother country because that's where their language is. But we Algonquin people, you cannot find our Algonquin language anywhere in the world, but right here in North America or Turtle Island or Canada. And that tells you that we are created here. This is our homeland. And it's so important that Canadians need to know this. They need to hear this, and they need to acknowledge it and to understand it, because we are the first peoples here. And we're very welcoming people, very welcoming, because our creation story speaks about all other peoples in the world. And our laws and our spirituality tells us the responsibility that we have to care and to share with one another. And we have been doing this, but it doesn't mean to take away from us. And to see, this is where Europe and religion with their religious beliefs and ideologies, they created laws that were placed on our people to dispossess us from our homelands, from our spirituality and our languages and our identity and so on. They created these laws called Doctrine of Discovery, which continues to be used against us, Manifest Destiny, Terra Nullius, and many papal, what they call the papal bulls that were issued by the Vatican. And so they created these laws. And from these laws come other laws. You had Section 1, Canada's first constitution called the British North American Act, Section 9124, that said all Indians and Indian lands are the federal jurisdiction. And therefore, they applied their other laws by saying that we discovered you people, we discovered your lands, so you now become wards of the crown, and now we will create other laws, i.e. the Indian Act, and we will then decide who has the right to be an Indian, who is not an Indian, and then they also applied other means in how to genocide our people. How do you build nations? Your nations are built from your children, right? From the women. If you no longer have children, then where are the people? So they attacked our women because our women in our Anishinaabe or in our traditional forms of governance and in our spirituality, our women were the leaders. We did not discard our men, absolutely not, because our men had their roles and responsibility as our women had their roles and responsibilities. Women were the caretakers of the land, the men were the protectors. So let's attack the women. That's what they said. Let us take away from the women, because you have to understand, Europe came here and still had their very patriarchal, patrilineal ideology. So when they came here, when they invaded, and then they implanted their own ideologies here, they took away from our women. And so they put that into law called the Indian Act by saying that our women would fall under men, and they took away our rights to be leaders. And then they attacked the children by taking away our children and sending them off to these notorious, and we're all hearing it now, right? Canada's hearing how notorious those so-called residential schools, you know, the finding of our children in those unmarked graves. And our people have been saying it for years. Those survivors have been saying it for years. They witnessed children being brutalized and children peers being murdered, only to be told it's not true. Well, the bones of the dead always speak the truth, that's for sure. Acknowledgements of truth are so important, right? Children. So attacking the women and attacking the children was a way of genociding to change our nations, right? To change removing us from our ancestral homelands, putting us on reserves. I always say the 3 R's. The 3 R's: religion, reserves, and residential schools. But there's also the good 3 R's, which is reclaiming, revitalizing, and restoring. Now, culture. It's very difficult to speak about, you know, culture, because there's so many different cultures of First Nations people. But what is the culture of the Algonquin people? Well, we are known as people that were the great barters. We even had our own economic system through this process called bartering or trading, right? So we were very good traders, and we always had our geopolitical structures in place. We have our vast territories. Yes, there are reserves of Algonquin people, but we also have our ancestral territories in Ottawa and the surrounding area of Ottawa, including Montreal and the surrounding areas of Montreal, or ancestral Algonquin homelands. So that's why it's important, you know, land acknowledgement, and then we welcome you into our homelands. We are great builders of canoes and and they call us nomadic people because we are travelers, right? We had our winter camps and our summer camps, and we did that. We travel from one location to another in our territories was to protect the land and not to overburden it with the usage of the land and the water. We have our, our spiritual beliefs. We have our songs and dances. We're very connected to the land. And in our clan system was with the animals. My grandmother always said that, the most important animals for the Algonquin people, because they provided our sustenance, they provided our survival, they provided our clothing, our medicine, the ways of traveling. Our waterways were so important to us, the rivers, and the rivers were our great highways. So my grandmother always said, like, important for the Algonquin people, like in the animal world, was the moose and the beaver and the partridge, and of course the bears. But again, that relates to our food sustenance, our medicine sustenance, and our clothing. And we still have our people today that still continue to practice those cultural skills of hunting and trapping and gathering and harvesting our medicines, and how we live with the land. And it's not just about living on the land, but it's living with the land. And land is so important to us and so sacred, as it is with all First Nations people, because the land is who we are. We come from the land. We will return to the land, the homelands of our ancestors, and now becomes the homelands that we need in order for us to survive as those first peoples, as Algonquin people. And land is so important to ensure that our children today and our grandchildren and those 7 generations will always have their homelands, because the land gives us not only our sustenance of food and medicine, but it's our spirituality connected to it, our ceremonies, and all our ancestors. The bones of our ancestors lay beneath Mother Earth in that resting place. So connected. When the Creator shared his homeland with us, when he gifted us with these homelands, it was a place for us to live as the first people, to worship our ancestors, and to ensure that who we are through our culture, our identity, and our heritage is so important. And we know who our people are. As Algonquin people, we know who our people are in our communities. And we're very protective. We are very protective of our homelands. We are very protective of our communities, and we're very protective of our identity, our heritage, and our culture, because far too often, so much has been taken from us. Our lands, our children, our ways of life, our spirituality, and our people are healing. Now I reflect on this prophecy that was said to me about 20 years ago, when I was sitting with elders, not only my grandfather, late William Commanda, but other elders, other Anishinaabe elders from different nations. And this prophecy was shared, and it said that it would come a day that they would come to take our spirit, because they've taken everything from us. They've taken our land, they've taken our language, they've taken our children, they've taken our ways of our geopolitical structures, and all that's left is our spirit. And they're going to come after our spirit. And we are seeing that today. And in our spirit is attached our identity, our heritage, our languages. And so we are seeing this new phenomena called, how, and I'm sure you hear about it. And the reason why I'm raising this with you is because I know you all have good hearts and you want to learn about our people, and you want to form that alliance with our people. And it's more than alliance, it's forming a partnership, it's forming relationships. And why I'm sharing this prophecy with you is because there are those out there who claim to be Algonquin, who are claiming to be First Nation, who are claiming to come from Kitigan Zibi, who are claiming to come from any of the Algonquin communities. And then they're going to play with your spirit And they're saying, come with me, I'll pray for you. I'm going to come to my ceremony. You cannot play with people's spirits. Please don't do that. That's what we keep telling these individuals. Don't do that. It's wrong because you're hurting people. So I say to you, my friends of the Ottawa Muslim Women's Organization, go to the communities. Go to the communities. Go to those Algonquin communities, those bona fide, legitimate Algonquin communities. And we are here. There are 11 legitimate Algonquin communities. There are 9 in Quebec, and there are 2 in Ontario, Pequawkanon and Waguchish. Those 11 are the only legitimate Algonquin communities. And communities that are created by legitimate Algonquin people, from our ancestors to we the people today, and for our children and grandchildren. And that prophecy, when it said they're going to come after our spirit, and I tell people this, when you claim you're Algonquin and you take my culture, my identity, and my people's culture, you're hurting my spirit, but you're also hurting my children and my grandchildren. You're hurting them. And the hurt of our children needs to stop. Needs to stop. You have the First Nations Caring Society, who's through Dr. Cindy Blackstock, who's doing so much to raise this awareness of the importance of our children deserve their basic human right to the quality life care right. And then our communities from coast to coast to coast are looking for their children who never made it home. And now they're being found in those unmarked graves. We're raising this awareness that somebody has to be held accountable for the killings of our children. We're raising this awareness that who we are as the First Peoples, and this is our land, and our land is so important, and we're sharing it. We're sharing our land. We're sharing our ways of knowing and our ways of being, so we can create these alliances and stand in solidarity with one another, stand in solidarity and in peace and friendship, because that was the true purpose, the pith and substance of treaty, the peace and friendship treaty, was the sharing of land and living in coexistence, in friendship, in peace and love. And so we, the Algonquin people, we are continuing to do this, to share, build those alliances. We have our ceremonies, which we and our beliefs of our traditions, and we continue to pass on those traditions and hold those ceremonies. We have our spiritual ceremonies. We also have our social gatherings, such as each year. Well, no, we haven't had it for 2 years because of COVID, but we are hoping that come this June, we will be able to gather once again our celebration called a powwow, where it's a celebration of our nations, our culture, celebrations of our people through song and dance. And we invite everyone to come and celebrate with us. And when we celebrate as First Nations people, when we celebrate, we not only are we celebrating our ancestral existence, not only are we celebrating our ancestors and the land and all our cultural ways, but we're also celebrating the resistance and celebrating survival. And we give it, and in those celebrations, we have our prayers, because one of our great traditions and teachings is we never, ever start anything without prayer. Prayer is always important. Even in a social gathering, prayer, always open in prayer, give acknowledgement, give thank you and gratitude for what we have. And then we also offer prayer for those that need prayer, healing prayers. It's about bringing people together. Yes, it's also acknowledging the creator. Because in our belief system, the creators, and my grandfather always said, and he would always tell government this, when the government would always tell, our people would always say to us, the federal government, the provincial government would always say to us, we're sovereign, we're the sovereign power, not you First Nations people, we're sovereign. My grandfather would always say, correction, there's only one sovereign, and that is God, that's the creator. sovereignty. For us, sovereignty, what it means is self-determination, nationhood. And we are, as Algonquin people, we are an oral history people. We have our wampum belts that record our oral history. And they're also our prophecy belts. But we are also we operate in a collective, cohesive society. We're a collective, cohesive society. Yes, we each have our own independence as a human being, self-determination, the right to know, the willpower to choose to make your own decisions. But as a community, as a nation, nationhood, collective, the collective. So when you hear our people, the Algonquin people are standing for the rights to their land, that's a collective. It's from that nation perspective. When you hear the Algonquin nation is standing together to protect the moose, it's again that collective. It's coming from that collective point of view. It's a collective. We have a collective responsibility to the land, to them, to our traditions, through our responsibilities. But yes, each community has their own community issues or realities. But even in that community, there may be an individual issue, but we make it a collective issue. We have to find that collective, the collective response to dealing with issues, because we believe, and I'm sure many of you have heard me say, and again, I reflect back on what I was taught as a child and what I was instructed to use or to say, is that our belief is when one falls, we all fall. When one cries, we all cry. When one succeeds, we all succeed, and we must lift one another up. We must come together to grieve with one another and pray and cry and love and show that kindness to one another. The example I will give you, when the graves of 215 children were found in Kamloops in last May, there was not a dry eye in all of our communities, because all our communities, it didn't matter if we were Algonquin, Mi'kmaq, Maliseet, Hongo-Hongwe, Dene, Ojibwe, Shuswap, Sequemp, Chippewayan, it didn't matter our nation. We all cried with our relatives, the Kamloops people. We grieved with them. So you see that collective, when one cries, we all cry. When one falls, we all fall. And we prayed for one another. We prayed for our Kamloops relatives. We prayed for the children that were found in those unmarked graves, and the Creator, He knows each and every one of those children by name. And we asked the Creator to tell these children that they are not forgotten and that we love them. We continue to grieve with our communities across Canada and even in the United States that are finding their children that never returned home from those notorious, which I call death camps, because they were not schools, they were not education. They were there for one reason. It was created for one reason when Duncan Campbell Scott said it in 1890. We shall remove the children from the savagery of the wigwam. We shall remove the children from the savagery of their mothers. For indeed, there will come a day that they will not have nothing to offer of Indian to their offsprings. Genocide. You genocide people by taking away their spirit, taking away their spirituality, taking away their language, taking away their culture, taking away their identity. But I'm thankful and grateful that the Creator protected many of us, and would not allow all our people to be destroyed. So we're revitalizing. And how are we healing? Because we reclaimed our spirituality and our culture, reclaiming. And that's what brings our healing. healing, because our communities certainly need to heal. My children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, I want them to know who they are, and I want them to be proud of who they are as the first children of this land, the first people of this land, and that they will continue to share, they will continue to know, they will continue to build relationships, and we will all live together in that peace and harmony as what was always intended from our ancestors and the settlers. And I commend you, the Ottawa Muslim Women's Organization and the Muslim community. I commend you for opening up your hearts and to learn about who we are as the Algonquin people and the First People. I commend you, and I believe and I have faith and confidence that we will stand in solidarity to make the right change that's needed, where Canadians will hear, and don't let anyone fool you or pull the wool over your eyes and say, oh, no, we're taking good care of the First Peoples. No, listen to our voices, because there's still many stories that are truths that need to be told. But I'm a believer in hope, because hope is free, right? And that education, bring in the source of First Nations people to hear our realities and speak our truths. And it's not about, being victims. It's about hearing the lived experience of First Nations people, because we all have our lived experiences, those lived experiences of our ancestral knowledge, that lived experience of the impacts of colonialism, the lived experience of those legacies of colonization and the hurtful impacts of genocide, and to hear about the lived experiences of healing. I'm not a residential school survivor, but my families, my children and my grandchildren, they are intergenerational survivors of residential schools. Like my children, their father was taken away at the age of 5 years old and sent off to St. Mary's Kenora residential schools. And I'm very thankful that their family, they came back, all the siblings came back home. I am a survivor of the Indian Day School, and I don't make a difference between residential schools or day schools, because my heart goes out to residential school survivors, because those kids were taken away from home. The children were taken away from home in their communities and sent far away, and they were not allowed to see their parents, and they weren't even allowed to see their siblings in those schools. They were totally separated. But you see, keep them away, the language couldn't be spoken, you break the family, you break that family spirit, you break that community spirit. And so when those children returned home, no wonder there's this thing called identity crisis, and then they needed to heal, right? And there was no parenting skills. Day schools had the same objective. It was to assimilate us. But we went home to our parents or to our homes each day. The schools were on the reserve. But there was still that process of assimilation, teachers telling us we were worthless, we were no good for nothing, and we would have nothing to contribute. And we had to be thankful to the church, and thankful to the government, and thankful to those Indian agents for providing us with education. And when I say Indian agent, it was not our people who were the Indian agents. These were white men that were deputized by the federal government to be the overseers of the reserves, because we couldn't leave the reserve. There were laws that were imposed on our people. You could not leave the reserve without a pass, and you needed that permission from the Indian agent to leave the reserve. So when I go back, just to go back to say, it's important to hear about those lived experiences, and the lived experiences of resistance, resilience, and survival. So important. So we continue to maintain our culture, and we're continue to pass on our culture to our children. And we see many of our youth, especially amongst our young people, that are saying, you know, I want to learn who I am as an Algonquin person. I want to learn who I am as a Ojibwe or Dene or Mi'kmaq or a Maliseet. I want to learn who I am. And so therefore, what is my culture? What are our people's teachings? So we need to go back to our ancestral histories. And again, I'm thankful that in the Algonquin way, because we're oral history people, that, you know, with the history, nation history, community history, family history, it's passed on. And so we're educating, we're passing it on down to our children. And there is still a lot of work that needs to be done, absolutely, because all of our communities are impacted by colonialism. So we do see how our communities are experiencing that breakdown of traditional knowledge, breakdown of traditional governance, breakdown of traditional ways of life. And what we are advocating is to restore those original traditional ways of governance, to restore those traditional ways of and our spiritual beliefs and our ceremonies. Many communities are facing challenges whereby the communities are not ready to accept the original spirituality of their people. So there's that conflict within communities, but again, you have to understand, why is there conflict? Because of colonization and assimilation, because of that, you know, and we sometimes do see how our communities are sort of like split. You have the traditional, and then you have the modern, we'll call it modern. And when I say traditional, the ones that carry the traditional knowledge of our ancestral ways and continue to practice those ceremonies, whereas the other side, they're more on the religion side. We don't take that away from them. We respect people's ways of how they believe and how they want to practice their you know, on their spiritual side, and that's okay, as long as you respect those of us that practice our traditional ways. It's about respect, really. So maybe have I gone over my time? And I hope that I have shared with you as much as I could about Algonquin culture. But just to talk about First Nations culture, it's what I tell my students when I enter a class at the beginning of a semester. How do you talk about 530 years of colonization in 13 weeks? How do you do that? You can't. So you have to condense it as much as possible. But I leave you with this, you know, what I think is really important is that just understand that amongst First Nations people, there's diversity, there's different nations, different languages, different beliefs, different traditions. Diversity is very important. But we also have our commonalities, the land, our ancestors, the creator, you know, through our creation stories, because we are the first people that were placed on this land called Turtle Island. And also, and I think this is the most fundamental, number one, Algonquin people. Who are the Algonquin people? The ones that belong in the nation, the legitimate nation, and that are located in those 11 communities, 9 in Quebec and 2 in Ontario. And please reach out to us, because we are here and we will always be here. Absolutely. And also that there are Inuit people, and then there are Métis people as well. But please reach out to the Inuit people, and please reach out, because there are some fabulous Inuit elders that you can invite, such as Elder David Sarako. He's great. And there's a Elder Manituk Thompson. but you can reach out to Natan Obed. He's the president of the new organization. And then you can reach out to the Métis people. They have their leaders as well that you can reach out to, that can come in and speak about their people and their culture. And I know that there's a new, I highly recommend that you contact Brenda McDougall at the University of Ottawa, and she definitely will direct you to the right Métis people to contact, to bring in, to share their history with you. But I want to end by saying thank you for inviting me to come and speak to you. Truly appreciate it. My eyes are kind of bothering me right now, and I think I need to start eating more carrots. I think I got to start being like Bugs Bunny and eat more carrots. Maybe I work too much and I'm always on my computer. Maybe it's because I'm just aging. That's why my eyes are failing me, maybe. And my heart is heavy today, and I don't understand why I have a heavy heart. And although I did do my, my purification, my smudging, and I offered my prayers, I still have a heavy heart. But prayer is good. I appreciate hearing the prayer from Iman, and I'm going to appreciate hearing the prayer from Elder Verna. But there are times that I don't begrudge when I feel this heaviness, because I know it's a gift. It's a gift of carrying this heaviness for someone who needs prayer, but it's pretty difficult to carry at times. And but you uplifted my day by inviting me into this beautiful circle of squares, and it's really nice to see many familiar faces. Familiar people, I should say. Sorry, I don't mean faces there, but familiar people. And it's nice to meet new people. And it's always a pleasure when I'm in the company of Councillor Teresa Kavanagh, who's quite supportive of the Algonquin people, and I appreciate that very much. And again, Sahada, thank you for that beautiful acknowledgement of Algonquin people. To you, Dr. Monia, and to Elder Nazira, thank you. I have to say this. I have to end with this. And you will all bear witness to this truth. The first time that you invited me to come into your annual gala, and I believe it was 2019, or maybe it was 18, and forgive me, but I know you invited me and I was there to this delicious meal and delicious desserts and beautiful, kind people. And you asked me, Elder Nazira asked me to give a ceremony. And so I had that sweetgrass ceremony, and I welcome you into my people's territory. And you know what? And I know I'm going to cry, and I'll try not to cry, but that was the first time that I ever felt welcome in my own territory. It's the first time, because there are many times I walk here in Ottawa and I really feel like a stranger in my own land. And I know why. It's because of, colonization and government, and not telling the truth about the real peoples of this land, right? But your community welcomed me. You gave me a safe space to speak, and you appreciated, and you made me feel welcome. You were the first group to invite me in and to share my story with, and to respect me and my people. So thank you. I thank you. Chimigwech, my friends. And just remember, hope is free, and we'll continue working with that hope. And the greatest gift that the Creator has given us is Zagietuin, love. So I love you.
We love you
Thank
too.
you. Miigwech.
We love you.
Miigwech.
We love you too.
We love you.
So much. Thank you.
Elder Claudette Commanda, I have no words. I know you said you are heavy-hearted today. I pray to the Creator, the Almighty, to envelope you in tranquility, peace. And I'm sending you on behalf of Ottawa Muslim Women Organization and all the participants here, very warm wishes. And thank you so much for taking the time. I know that it's not easy sometimes to relive your experiences by talking about them. And so, this is an honor for us, for you taking the time and to sharing with us so openly, so inspiring. I have learned a lot, and I'm also getting a bit emotional. The conversations are very discomforting. It may make us uncomfortable, but that is a very good thing, because once we are uncomfortable, it causes us to take action. And as you invite all of us here to be allies and to walk in solidarity, I want to go a step further and ask of all of us here that being an ally by words or in writing or land acknowledgements, as much as it's important, is not enough. It requires us to take social action. It requires all of us to be courageous, to have some kind of strength, and to be humble and have a willingness to learn. And I am sure I speak for everyone here that we have learned a lot from your talk. As we continue this journey of learning, I invite all of you here that, as we are energized to do something or to be allies, that we should always remember that Indigenous people have been living their reality for thousands and thousands of years. So they are the experts of their realities and their histories. So we will always come to you to guide us so that we can be better allies. And I want to throw a challenge out there. I'm getting excited about this idea because I've learned something about the true 11 communities, the genuine ones that you told us about. I'm so excited to hear that. And I want to throw a challenge to my colleague board members and everybody here who is here today, because just, responding to the call and taking the Zoom call and taking the time to log in and be here, you are already allies. So thank you so much. But I want to throw a challenge out there and say that why don't we, when the weather gets better, a bus load of all of us, take one community at a time, and then we will go spend a day, learn, because in living with the people, that is how we can appreciate and be better allies. As settler immigrants to this country, we, especially as first generation immigrants, we come here from our various home countries to Canada looking for greener pastures. And for some of us, we will come here, give birth to children, get blessed with all the opportunities that are existing in Canada without a clue about the people on whose land we live in. So this is very important to me, and this is very important to Ottawa Muslim Women Organization. And so we'll continue to do this. And for all of you who are here, be on the lookout. You'll be hearing from us so that we can come together continually to be with Indigenous people. So thank you so much. Without further ado, I would like to call on Elder Verna McGregor. She was supposed to be here to open us, but I think we mixed up the timing a little bit, but we are excited, and I'm personally looking forward to your opening and the music, which is also a prayer. So before I call Elder to, give us some music here, I'll just read a brief bio about Elder Verna McGregor. And Elder Verna is from the Algonquin community of the Kitigan, Zibi, and Anishinaabe, which is approximately 120 kilometers north of Ottawa. Ottawa is part of the Algonquin Nation's traditional lands. Elder Verna works at the Minnewacan Lodge, the Aboriginal Women's Support Center located in Ottawa. Services and resources provided by the Minnewacan Lodge assist in the empowerment of Aboriginal women living violence. Elder Verna has remained firmly grounded in her community and nation by also being part of the group of traditional grandmothers and elders. This includes promoting the retention of the Algonquin language and culture, which is so important when addressing issues and connection to the land. So welcome, Elder, and thank you so much for being here.
Omi kwetstahada kweka kina bonjour tout le monde. For an additional cost, kitagonzi bin in donjaba wagosh ne do damashich onim ki penesi natanjimina dona don't in essential nongo. Hi, my name is Verna. It's Sahara mentioned. What I say is to also is that Fox is my clan on my mother's side, and Onimki Penesi, which is Thunderbird, is my clan on my father's side. The clan system was passed down by the women, known as the river people. We're known for the birch bark canoe. And Ottawa is at the confluence of the rivers coming together from the four directions. So we would meet in Ottawa prior to all this colonization and genocide and talk about what's going on the land. And we're put on these little patches.
Take your plate and cut.
We can't hear you.
Patches of land. And you weren't allowed to leave unless you had a permit. Why did they do that? As Elder Claudette mentioned, is a lot of times it prevented the parent trying also retreat their speakers on. If you don't forget to mute, I'll ask maybe people to mute. Yeah, so that's why we're here, and why they created the reserve system also is it was a way to the lands here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with, because it's a women's organization, and this is a song we sing a lot to the women too coming in Minwashin Lodge. We first of all we do the drum, and I have a drum here. Why do we drum? If you for that, it's the heartbeat. We call it Odewe gun. Ode means heart, and Odewe gun is heart instrument because it represents the beating of the heart, and the first heartbeat or beating of the drum you hear is when you're in your mother's womb.
I think Elder Verna is.
She's frozen. I'm going to text her.
Yeah.
Womb. And that's her heartbeat. So a lot of times, sometimes when you go to a gathering or powwow and there's drumming, sometimes you get a little chill. And the elders say it's because you're remembering when you were in your mother's sweat lodge. Pardon me? Oh, can you hear me?
We do hear you, Elder, but sometimes it's a choppy.
Yeah, I wonder if it's my connection. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sing you a song right away, if you can hear me. And that's the trouble with technology. Really quickly too as well, I was with the Center for Global Pluralism yesterday, and they created this report, and it's called Where Sussex Drive Meets the Kichizibi. And they also included a history of the Algonquin people, which I found was really interesting. also too as well. And how do we include everybody? But also too as well, it's retaining our diversity too, because I think diversity drives our growth, and it also leads to innovation. So I'm going to sing you a song, because for us, women are very powerful because we bring in the next generation. And diversity started with understanding the male female. Although our roles were different, it didn't mean one was superior to the other. So we sing a song to honor women, and it's called Strong Women Song, and it goes like this. And I use my rattle because rattle represents healing. So it goes like this. And you can sing along, and you can mute if you want to, but it's finding your voice too. So it goes like this. Way, hey, way, hey, hey, oh, way, hey, way, hey, hey, oh, way, hey, hey, hi, way, hey, way, hey, hey, hi, hey, hi, yo, way, hey, way, hey, way, hey, hey, yo, way, hey, way, hey, hey, yo, way, hey, way, hey. Hey, way, hey, hey, hi, yo. Way, hey, way, hey, hey, hi, yo. Way, hey, way, hey, way, hey, hey, hi, yo. Way, hey, way, hey, hey, hi, yo. Miigwech. That's the song for also too as well, the International Women's Day last week, but it's here, I think, for the whole month. And the moon is also tied to biggest clashes and understanding was also the role of women. And as Claudette mentioned, in our wampum belts, we'll be at a crossroads with this environment, detriment of the next 7 generations, our children's children's children. And one of the part of this prophecy was also is the rise in women to bring back, to find their voice, to bring back that balance of the earth, because it was always about the balance for us, our understanding with the sun, the moon. There was Father, the sun, and the moon, the women. For us, our understanding is that women are keepers of the water, men are keepers of the fire. There's a difference, but it didn't mean that they were superior, that the male female balance each other in order to bring in the next generation. And we are caretakers of the earth as the two-legged, in honor also to respect all creation, which includes the four-legged, the plants, the winged ones, the ones that crawl, the ones that swim in the ocean. So again, too, as well, that's why we sing, to honor all that. So with that too, as well, I was asked to sing 2 songs. So if you want, Mona, I could sing at the end, and I would sing a canoe song because there's teachings to the canoe, or I can sing it now. So I don't know which do you prefer?
So thank you, Elder Verna. I think we would let you just close us off with your second song, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
So you can go to the question and answer.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
So I'll mute myself.
Yeah, thank you. That was beautiful. Thank you so much. We were dancing and singing along, so thank you. We really, really appreciate that. So if you guys have any questions, I'm going to give you maybe about 20 minutes for either Elder Claudette or Brittany or even Elder Verna. Any question you have at all, you can either type it in the chat box, or you can just unmute yourself and ask the question, and any of our guest speakers will be able to answer for you. And before we go to the Q&A, I encourage each one of you, please go to omw2001@gmail.com to donate towards the Caring Society. You heard Brittany talk about the society and everything that you are doing. This is part of our small effort in joining in solidarity. So please, this event is meant to raise money. So if you are inclined to do that, please, you can send e-transfer to OMW, Omonia, if you don't mind putting it in the chat box so everybody can copy it. Send us e-transfer through that. So Monia has just put the email address there. That's where you can send us the e-transfer. We also, if you are not already a member of Ottawa Muslim Women Organization, like we said, our membership is not limited to Ottawa Muslim women only. It's open to everybody, and it's $25 a year to be a member. And that money would also go towards the Caring Society. So please go ahead and send your membership money if you are inclined to be a member as well, in addition to donating towards the cause. Monia?
Yes, I have a question for Elder Claudette Commanda. First of all, thank you, Miigwech, Elder Claudette, for being with us and for also your kindness to really, like you said, summarize thousands of years of history into half an hour. So I guess we need more of this session, and we need to educate ourselves. And thank you for giving us some names. I'm sure our organization will keep these in mind and will try to invite other people, either from the First Nations or from the Inuit or from the Métis, to come and tell us and educate our members about what you were qualifying the invisibility of either First Nation or Inuit or Métis. I have a question for you, because you are talking about, I mean, you mentioned the residential schools, you mentioned the language, you mentioned the land, and you said how they were taken away from you or destroyed or confiscated. What do you think? And you also talked about the spirit, how your spirit was, I mean, is very hard today to be, I mean, it's there, but bring it back and keep it. But what do you think made all these, and I know it's maybe hard, but I'm very, very curious to know how people survive. Because all these attempts were, I mean, I'm not talking about attempts, these are like genocide, how people were able to survive. Yeah, please, yeah, tell us.
Wow, that is a powerful question, but I'm glad you asked it. I'm glad, because, you know, I've asked that question to myself many times. I've asked that many times when my mother and I, when my mother was alive, we would have deep conversations. That question, like, how did our people, how did they survive? Especially, you know, children, you know, all of this abuse and these atrocities happen to children. I mean, when we're looking at residential schools, right? You have to have such a strong spirit to endure this abuse and survive it as a child. How did we yeah, survive. I believe that despite the hardship and abuse that our people suffered, somebody was watching out for us. Someone. There was somebody up there in that spirit world was watching out for us, because we couldn't do this alone ourselves as human beings. And when I think about the children, and yes, many children did not make it home, and that is so sad that the children lost their lives there. Whether those children died in those schools because of malnutrition or disease, or they were murdered, is the fact that they died there. You don't go to school to die or to be buried. And when we look at it from a very wide lens of from whether you're children or an adult, and to suffer these injustices, to suffer the abuse, and we're still here today, that speaks to me, it speaks volumes of strength, because we never lost our belief. We always, even if we didn't understand that our spirit was praying for us, it was praying for us. And yes, somebody was, all I can say is somebody was watching out for us. And I'm grateful that the Creator did not allow all of us to be destroyed, and all of us have been hurt for sure, because we're hearing about intergenerational trauma, but strength. And I believe too that deep down somewhere in there was so much strength that we didn't even see that we had the strength. And how can you understand that as a child anyhow to begin with, right? But I thank you for asking that question, because it is the ultimate question, really. And we still talk about that. I'm having this discussion now with my children and with my grandchildren and with others. And when we sit, for example, day school survivors, we sit together and we share our experience in the day schools. And there are times I will sit with residential school survivors and I hear what they're saying about their lived experience in residential schools. And there's silence. After everyone has said what needs to be said, there's silence. And we know what we're thinking and we know what we're feeling. So there's silence. And we look at each other and we just said, how did we survive? How? And we know that our loved ones up above were watching and helping us. So prayer, obviously somebody was praying for us too. I believe our grandparents and those old ones were praying for us, and we continue to pray. But I don't know. That question was asked to me back in the fall when my grandson and I did this 1-hour interview on Indian day school and residential schools. My experience and how my grandson, how did he see, or how does he feel about this, and what's his position as a young man and as a survivor of he's an intergenerational survivor of residential school and day school. And basically he said that how the question was asked him was like, how did you survive? And he said, well, I thank my grandparents for their strength in surviving. Otherwise, I would not be here surviving. Strength, spiritual strength is what I believe. Yeah. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Thank you. Powerful question and a beautiful answer, Elder Commanda. Thank you so much. I think there was a question in the chat by Farhat, Sister Farhat. And I think Elder Verna might have answered it.
I think so, yes. But yeah, if Elder Verna would like to say something, to add anything, please go ahead.
Yeah, they were just asking if in Washington Lodge has any other events so that the women can come and attend and try the drumming. And we usually attend a lot of open events, like public events. And sometimes we bring the drums too as well, because we have a box full of drums. And sometimes we've gotten other women to come in and sing the songs too as well. We also have a women's retreat prior to the pandemic, and it started for the women at the shelter to get a break from the city life and come and do arts and crafts and reconnect to culture, including drumming. So sometimes too as well, that's other women from the public have requested to come in too as well. And so, yeah, they've attended. We also have a number of Indigenous women who also identify as Muslim. And again, too, as well, they've participated too. So it's that understanding too, as Claudette mentioned, but sitting with the elders all these years, our understanding was, it's the respect of everybody's belief in the creator,
Right,
God,
exactly.
Allah.
Right.
As long as you don't hurt anybody else, and it's our respectful and relatives. And one of the teachings when we were sitting in, I'd sit in a lodge a lot with the elders. They said that, with Christopher Columbus arriving here in 1492, we as First Nations, with this colonization and genocide, we've experienced that for over 500 years. And we've seen so many newcomers come to our lands. But also too, as well, some people get really upset with that. But he says, you got to understand too as well, we understood that the people coming to our lands were also escaping oppression, and their lives were in danger. And what happened with the European invasion here too was that they were escaping oppression. If you really, really look at the explorers, for example, for us, we met Samuel de Champlain 1604, and he saw all the riches of the land here. And then they started this war to claim those resources and lands because they were dispossessed from their lands. And what was going on in his time, this famous explorer, you'll see him behind the National Gallery, was that there was the religious wars going on in Europe, and they were brutal. And so they ended up coming here as a safe refuge. So this intergenerational trauma a lot of times goes back to even further to people that have arrived here and made Turtle Island their new home because they needed a place of refuge. And you'll see that too now what's going on in the world with the war. So it's having that understanding that at the end of the day too as well, we're all in need of healing. And to honor the journey around the medicine wheel too. And sometimes it's trying, but at the same time too as well, it's that understanding too, because what they said is we need to heal ourselves in our own ways, in our own journey here. Even you being here today is that learning, because if we don't heal ourselves, look at what we humans are doing to Mother Earth and the survival of our next generation, our children's children's children. So the songs are important too, and the prayers are important, and but most importantly, our understandings are important too to share. Miigwech.
Thank you so much, Elder Verna. Thank you so much.
We have a question from May and from Sister Nazira Tareen as well.
So May Jabari, you can go first.
Hi. First of all, thank you.
There is an echo, May.
Okay, 1 second. Sorry.
While May is fixing that, Auntie Nazira, do you want to ask your question? So we can give me, you are muted. Oh, I see what's happening. They are in the same place.
Yeah, that's the problem. First of all, I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to especially thank Helen Kair for introducing me to Claudette. And Claudette, this is the second time you have spoken in our organization, and we are so happy to see you again. And we plan to welcome you again and again. And Helen took me to the Manavaki powwow. I have gone there twice. First time I went alone. Second time I took other members from my community. If you have one this year, Helen, we are coming in a big convoy. Yeah, I'm bringing a lot of people from OMWO, and we are going to come to your powwow again, and we are going to learn. I had memorized that song that she just sang, but I couldn't remember the words right now. I'm 82, I'm getting old. And also, we are very grateful to you for sharing your stories. And Claudette, you made me cry. I was crying. We were all crying. You were not the only one crying at that time. We all cried with you. Ever since we saw the Kamloops disaster, we are with you. As a mother and a grandmother, I don't know how those people survive losing their children. It is very, very sad, and we hope to be with you always. You can count on us always. Today there was a big function. All the Muslim associations were there at a lunch, this morning at a brunch, and I told them all about you. And inshallah, as we say, God willing, I hope all of them will support you. And we are going to list all the names of the Muslim organizations who are supporting us to support you. Thank you.
Come on. Come. Okay. Hi, my name is May Jabera, and I'm the joint treasurer. First of all, can you hear me? Can everyone hear me? Everybody's nodding, so that's good. Okay, perfect. That's a good sign. So thank you for all the speakers that came up today, Elder Claudette and Elder Verna. We greatly appreciate your time and your wisdom, and for sharing all your knowledge and your experiences with us.
You're still echoing. Could you turn the other screen off?
Which screen?
Maybe you guys have to.
I think you had yours too, May.
One of it is on. That's why you're echoing. Okay, go ahead. Let's see.
Okay. Can you? Is it still echoing?
Yeah, it's better now. Yeah.
Better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do I need to start over?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so first of all, thank you for our guest speakers today, Elder Claudette and Elder Verna. Thank you so much for your wisdom and to educate us and sharing your experiences with us. And also I want to take the opportunity also to thank my board members. Without them, I wouldn't be here, first of all, and also for supporting this event, and also guiding me and always giving me wisdom and sharing their experiences and inspiring me on constant basis. So I just had a couple of questions for Elder Claudette. You mentioned about the First Nations culture, and you said that the Métis and the Inuit are not First Nations. Could you just explain that a little bit to me, just so I understand?
Yes. Okay, good question. And it's a question that needs to be asked all the time, because there's the belief, it's a common misunderstanding out in the world that First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people are the same people, and we're not. We're very different people. So different people will talk about it in a sense of biology and language and traditions and our histories are very, very different. The government of Canada has put the three peoples under one category, Aboriginal and now Indigenous. And by the way, these languages, these terminologies are not ours. They're not ours. I'm not Aboriginal. I'm not Indigenous. I'm Anishinaabe Algonquin, number one.
Okay.
And that's the other point that need to want to raise, is that be careful of the terminology. And it's not our terminology, it's government. They always create terminologies to define our peoples. I don't know what it's going to be like in 5 years. They'll probably come up with another terminology, and as far as I'm concerned, when they develop these definitions and these terminologies, it's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope because it's pan-Aboriginal, pan-Indigenous. They put us all together. We're not the same people. We have different rights. We have different histories, period. That's critical. That's so important. And it's how the government of Canada has treated with each of these three groups of people. So we're very different in culture, in language, in traditions, in histories, and in rights, put it that way, right? Okay. So why I say it's slippery slope? Because my rights are not Métis rights, are not Inuit rights. The rights of the Inuit are not the rights of the First Nations, and so on. And so you can't, they like to put us on this thing called a bandwagon, and it becomes all mixed up. And at the end, afterwards, it becomes so complicated and it creates many complexities. And then it's like, then the government or the courts say, well, okay, here it is now. Let's pick it out now. Okay, let's give this right to First Nations. Let's give this right to Inuit. Let's give this right to Métis. And at the end of the day, what started as a First Nation right now becomes everybody else's right. And then you can't be doing that, because treaty, and then you have to understand treaties. There were no treaties that were made with Métis people. There were no treaties made with Inuit people. And as a matter of fact, not all First Nations people have treaties. The Algonquin Nation does not have a treaty, but we don't have we're not a numbered treaty. We do have a peace and friendship treaty. So, I mean, there's a lot of complexities and lots, right? But we're not the same people. To answer your question, we're not the same people. We're very different people. We each have our own geopolitical structures, our own histories, our own realities, our own solutions, our own. We're very independent, but we do support one another. We absolutely do support one another, and that's so important to support one another, because even though we're different, we can see the commonalities that we have because we have been removed from our rights. We've been removed from our histories. We've been removed from our lands, right? So it's really important. So on one hand, the government likes to put us all together and mix us up, but yet on the other hand, then the government likes to keep us separated too, you know, and a good example, and if I may use this as an example, we have Brittany Matthews here, who's Métis, and she's working with the First Nations Caring Society, because she has the understanding that when we're looking at the child welfare system, it not only impacted First Nations or Inuit people, it also impacted the Métis, because there was a time in Canada, it's called a 60 scoop. And predominantly out west, like in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta, they had a policy that was called, basically they used to put it in the paper, please come and adopt an Indian or a Métis child. So it was the removal of children from their families. It was called a 60 scoop, the child welfare system. So we need to ensure that we don't put the three people together, keep them separated, and you will hear when the Inuit speak about their history, and then when the Inuit speak about the Inuit and then the Métis speak about their history, you'll see that you will come to see the differences. But I say that we have a collective to say that when when we're sharing this as my grandson Ryder always said, he goes, there's a common enemy and it's government. So he goes, listen, we're not the enemy. And he pointed at the Parliament Hill, right? He pointed at the Peace Tower. That's the enemy right there, right? So, okay, so I hope I've answered your question here, but it's really important to understand that. And, you know, and we have respect, you know, I have deep respect for the Inuit. I have deep respect for the Métis people, because you know, it's sad to see that when you hear their stories, you know, how they were displaced too as well. It's heart-wrenching, very heart-wrenching.
I do have a couple more questions, actually, follow-up questions. Is that okay?
Because I'm trying to respect our guest speaker's time here, so we have 3:50, so I'm going to allow you one more question.
One more? Oh,
yes.
No. and also, Naveen, I think
Naveen had a question, so
very quickly.
Very quickly, so we can, yeah.
Okay, that's it. Yeah, one more. So just a follow-up question. So in regards to the First Nations, and like you said, for the Métis and the Inuit, you said there's 11 legitimate communities. Are they also part of, is the Métis and the Inuit also part of those 11 legitimate communities, or they're not?
No, the 11 legitimate communities that I was speaking about are specifically and only Algonquin.
Algonquin. Okay.
The nation that Vern and I come from, and her cute little grandson that's right beside her there, that sweet little Whalen, who's going to be the next Prime Minister of Canada.
Who is that?
Elder Verna's grandson.
Can I just pipe in real quickly? With the Métis too was it was the intermarriage of various First Nations with Europeans, and that came with the first generation considered Métis. The problem issue with that though too as well now is that there's so many generations of people coming forward that go back now even 10 generations, 5 generations, saying now, oh, we're Métis or we're Indigenous. The issue though, biggest thing too with that is the difference too is in inherent rights, and again to the definition of inherent was that like the right, for example, for us, we traded prior to contact. So that right was there prior to contact, or that understanding was there prior to contact. So then that puts into this Métis understanding now, because again, too, a lot of times the Métis understanding was the adoption also of the understanding of religion and the non-practicing of the spiritual beliefs too. So it's complex, and I think we need to evolve in terms of what makes you also, yes, Algonquin is it the culture, the language, but also too as well the blood quantum that they go by. So it's very complex today, but today too as well, you have the Inuit have their own jurisdiction, which goes under the territorial jurisdiction of Nunavut. And the Métis, their jurisdiction, that falls under the provincial jurisdiction. But again, it goes back to even the treaties here. The understanding of the treaties with First Nations was on a nation-to-nation basis, which went from the Algonquin nation with the British Crown and the Algonquin nation with the French Crown when they were settling these lands here. So, but then they saw the richness, so it was the overall goal was the elimination of First Nations or Indians here. And then that's where they created the Métis too, which they identified them as half European and half Indian. And then they were no longer part of the Indian Act. Right. So it's all the complexity, and that's what Claudette mentioned about also too as well. The role of government was originally was the elimination that there'll be no Indians left under the Indian Act. So that legislation and then they say, oh, it's easy, get rid of the Indian Act. The reality is the Indian Act is the only thing that upholds the lands here too with the reserve. And we don't, and again and also too as well, why we didn't partake too as well, we had our own system of governance, and that's not sometimes our understanding of even the parliamentary system. So when you say like the next prime minister, well, no, that wasn't our system of governance. And that's why a lot of Indians under First Nations didn't vote, because a lot of the elders say that's not our understanding of governance. So how do you reconcile that? And that's part of reconciliation.
Thank you very much, Major Barra. You asked two powerful questions that has further enlightened us. So thank you so much. Nevin, you had a question? And I'll give Nevin the last question.
So I guess I'll ask my question because I'm also a teacher in the Ottawa Carleton District School Board. And so mine would be related to basically your viewpoint of how basically government schools, like I know there's a very distrust of the education system in regards to how Indigenous people feel towards the government funded schools, which I totally understand, coming back from what you talked about, like they used education as a way of assimilating and completely eradicating destroying the First Nations culture and, like you said, spirit and their belief systems. And coming from that, there's a huge distrust. But now with the whole reconciliation, and there's been like implementation of different initiatives, there's the Indigenous education team that basically gives us newsletters or resources that they come up with that we can use in classrooms. So personally speaking, as someone who's also have grandkids in the school system, do you think there's been a progress in that sense? Or do you think like this is some sort of a good way to kind of build the trust again? Like, what do you think? Now with the whole land acknowledgement, like we basically participated, each classroom, our principal was very big on the land acknowledgement, like each classroom participated in coming up with their own land acknowledgements, and we would say that in morning announcements. So there's been like initiatives, but overall, like, what is your view? Like, do you think like the school systems are still, like, do you feel that, like, do you think you can gain trust again? Or personally speaking, what do you think? Or it's a pretty
it's a very loaded question, but let's try to answer it. Okay, so where do I begin? Okay, so do you want the Claudette Commanda version, or do you want my very professional version?
No, I want your honest, authentic.
Oh, there's still a hell of a lot of work that needs to be done, because you know, I think about okay, first of all, I'm going to tell each and every one of you, you need to read this book called Thunder in My Soul by Patricia Montour. And she has an excellent article that speaks about, and to this day, we still see these systems that Montour speaks about that continue to be used to dispossess First Nations people. Law, so the legal, law, and education. And how education was used against us, like residential schools, day schools, and then of course going into the mainstream education system. And then what the history books were, what they wrote about us. And I remember as a child going to school off the reserve that you know, the history books were filled with like Indians were drunks, Indians were cold-blooded killers, Indians were lazy, and you know, it was not our story, it was his story, right? So they were not truths. There are some changes for sure that have been made, but it depends on where it is, the city, it depends on the school board, it depends on the districts. If you think about Toronto, that one particular district in Toronto, what they did was they threw out the history books that were being used in that particular school, right? They threw it out, and they recruited, and this was the efforts that was First Nations people, the bands or the First Nations that were in the surrounding area of Toronto, the Mississauga and the Ongohongwe, they approached the school boards in Toronto and said, enough is enough, because your education system continues to perpetuate and promote racism against First Nation students. We want history to be rewritten. We want new curriculum. So after many years of advocating, finally the school board said, and this was even before this reconciliation. Mm-hmm. So the school board said, yes, okay, we need to make a change. They threw out all their history, the curriculum they were using, and it was the First Nations who wrote the history. They wrote it from their own perspective, which included not only just their ancestral, pre-contact knowledge, but also the contact knowledge of colonization and so on. And they introduced this curriculum from grade 1 right up to grade, whatever it is, 11 or 12. And that's helping to change people's mind, because you've got to remember, I think back about what Murray Sinclair said when he launched the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report in June of 2015. He said, not only were First Nations children robbed of an education, but so were all Canadian children, because they never told the Canadian children what they were doing, what was happening in Canada against First Nations people.
I never learned it in high school, actually.
Right, and I'm a university professor, and guess what? I'm not surprised that every time I walk into my first class of a semester, and I asked students, do you know this? Do you know that? Do you know about this? No, because we never learned it. And this is 2022.
Yeah.
So there still needs to be change, not only in elementary or primary or secondary, but also in the post-secondary institutions. Curriculum has to be written by our people, the truth, so yes, there are some changes, and I see along the way, like, good changes. Yes, for sure, absolutely. But there's still a lot more work that needs to be done, because land acknowledgement is a good start, but land acknowledgement has not eradicated the racism that our children are experiencing in these schools. And racism is still there. As a matter of fact, just this week, it was brought to my attention that one of our young boys, that this little boy, he's in grade 1, and he wears his hair in braids because it's very important for our boys. The hair is so important because there's a spiritual, cultural connection. So guess what? His hair was cut by children in the classroom, by older children in other grades. And the school says, well, we'll worry about it later. Mm. You can't be doing it. This is so. Do I trust the education system? No, I don't. But there has to be change, has to be made, and dialogue as such. And then what we're doing here. But I have to also say what my grandfather said to me. And I think back about what Chief Dan George said in 1967 what he said to Canada when Canada was celebrating its 100th centennial existence. Oh yeah, that's it. That's another thing. We keep telling them that long before Canada became a country, we were always here, and we are still here. Like, so we're damn well older than Confederation. Like, duh, get it in your minds, buddies, right? So, okay, for some, the light bulb hasn't gone on yet, or they're still dealing with a 5 watt instead of like a 60 or 100 watt. Okay, that's beside the point. But what Chief Dan George said was, there will be a new breed of warriors that will rise. He will put away the bow and arrow, and a new breed of warrior will rise with the pen in his hand and the book in the other hand. And he will become he will rise, and he will enter into those big houses, and he will make our people into the greatest segment of society. He was talking about education. Okay, so my grandfather always encouraged, and my father always encouraged education, mainstream education. But importantly, not to forget who we are, not to forget who we are, number one. When I was accepted into law school, I was battling, do I go, do I not go? Do I go, do I not go? So I went to see my grandfather and I passed him tobacco and I said, Gramps, I've been accepted into law school, what do I do? So my grandfather, with his kind, very dear heart, who always had a way of teaching many messages, well, he said, okay, I'll think about it. So I had to wait patiently for 2 hours, and he was teaching me patience. So he said to me, go and see your aunt and have a cup of tea with her. I said, okay. So I went. And my grandfather finally came in after 2 hours and he said, you are going to go. You are going to go to law school. And I knew he was teaching me patience because I was not a very patient person at that time, 20 some years ago. I was not. But he was teaching me patience, right? To learn patience. But he said to me, yes, you're going to go to law school. And I said, but why, Gramps? Because the system has always been against our people. Law and education has always been against our people. And he said, no, you will go to law school and you will learn the white man's legal language. You will learn the white man's education system. Those two, which were always used against us as a weapon, they will now become our tool, because you will speak the white man's language. You will understand the white man's machine. And that is what you will use to advance our people's rights. And so don't worry about law school. Yeah. Don't worry about it. He says it will never change who you are, because you are entering law school on a strong cultural foundation, and it will never change you and it cannot change you. I said, thank you. Because he said, never forget who you are as a Anishinaabe. And so I went to law school. I did well, and I did not struggle academically nor culturally, unlike many of my peers. They struggled. And I said to them, that's because you don't know who you are and you're not grounded in your culture, and you got to be grounded in your culture first. And don't think that you're going to save the world. You can't. You just, and what I used, the mechanism I used was I shelved my convictions, my beliefs. I've shelved them. Every time I walked into that classroom, I put them on a shelf and I said, I'm here to learn the law. And I know I'm going to be graded on the law that the professor is giving me. So I'm here to listen. And that's what I did. And every time the lecture was over, I took back my conviction and I placed it upon me. It didn't change me. It did not change me. But I acquired a legal education, and it has helped very much, you know, and I don't mean only in a sense of, well, yeah, in a sense, it has helped me to grow for sure. But as my grandfather said too, you have to be that role model. You have to be that sacrifice in order for your children to see the value of education, and in order for our children, your children and grandchildren, to take us out of poverty. And receiving an education, just remember, it now becomes our tool against oppression, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely.
So a lot of work still to be done, but I commend you for you know, the schools that are taking a lead and making change. And what I really believe is that, especially in well, even in banned schools, they have to introduce land-based education, because the system has never been ours. It's not our system. We have to utilize our own system. And we always add education. And education is that lifelong learning from the cradle to the grave. It's it's land-based, you know, land-based with the land of the land, with the language. And that is what we need to enter. Some people will argue, well, how are you going to put land-based education in education? It can be done. Just don't kill the idea before you even think about it, you know? Yeah. So I hope I've answered your question.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for that. I definitely do, like on my end, I always like to choose books. If I'm doing read aloud with my grade 2 class, it always has to be from an Indigenous author. So just tell the narrative from the So I definitely, I'm a huge proponent of that. So I definitely believe in that. And if we're doing art, like I add like Indigenous art
Yep.
to like, that's what I do on my end. But like you said, there's definitely way more work to be done and it has to be kind of uniformed. And sometimes it depends on the school or the principal, you know what I mean? So it's different from school to school, like you said. So
Right.
thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Naveen, for that question. And thank you, Elder Claudette, for elaborating on that question. We continue to learn as people are asking more questions. So on that note, before I invite Elder Verna to sing us out, I would like to remind all of you again, please, we are collecting donations towards the Caring Society. So please send your donations to omwo2001@gmail.com. Or if you don't want to do e-transfer and you wish to send a check, you can also send it to our head office, which is the Ottawa Muslim Women's Organization. And the address is 2871 Richmond Road, Suite 109, Ottawa, Ontario. Monia, could you please help me again by putting it in the chat box? So please, I encourage you, all of you, we've heard here, and we will do our part to continue. I always say that decolonizing, you know, it's a journey because it took years and years so to colonize, and it was intentional. And so we also have to be intentional on that journey of decolonizing. And so if you allow us, we will like to work with you on that journey as well and learn as much as we can. And like you pointed out today, we use terminologies that are Eurocentric and it's not your language. We would like to learn the right, correct terminologies that you would want us to use so we can be on that journey with you. So thank you so much again. And on that note, I will invite Elder Verna to give us the closing music.
A closing song. Hello, everybody. I'm just going to sing a little canoe song. And for us, we're known for the birch bark canoe, from the birch bark tree, the birch tree. And one of the teachings is also, it teaches you, for those of you who've ever been on a canoe, it teaches you about the need for balance really quickly. Otherwise, the other one is, one of the teachings too is to honor everybody's journey here, which is also too as well diversity, diversity of thought.
I better heat. Verna, we can't hear you.
She's singing. She was
Verna, we can't hear anything. Let's write it in the chat.
My mother was the, yeah, this was, my mother was the Algonquin language teacher, and that understanding too as well. There's still a big difference. There's still a big difference in understandings. And so it's good that you have a gathering today. So I wish you well. And it goes like this. Ajaye pizagewe kwashuek hinawigo kamachapan Chiman. This is a paddling song, so it goes like this when you're on the river. Hey ya hey, hey ya hey, hey ya hey, hey ya ho, hey ya hey ya hey, hey ya hey ya hey ya ho, hey ya hey, hey ya hey ya hey, hey yo. Nongo gwechta bizage we kwashuek hina we go Kama Japan Chiman Chiman. Now here's the last part for everybody if they want to join in. And it's all about we're paddling home off our screens really. So it goes like this. Hey ya, hey, hey ya, hey, hey ya, hey, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey ya, hey, hey ya, hey ya, hey ya, ho. Hey ya, hey, hey ya, hey ya, hey, hey yo. Miigwech, everybody, and paddle home safe. Or turn your screens off safe and don't surf the net too much.
Thank you so much. I felt like I was in that canoe. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. That was beautiful. What a beautiful way to end our program today. Again, I cannot thank each one of you enough for taking the time. You know, you all inspire me. The fact that you actually responded to the call to attend here already shows that you are in this with us. So thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. And again, Elder Claudette, thank you so much. We really, really do love you. And I have no words to express that other than giving you a virtual hug from here on behalf of Ottawa Muslim Women Organization. We're sending you virtual hugs and love. Brittany Matthews, thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And thank you so much for the work you are doing at the Caring Society. And we are looking to raise money and we hopefully will get enough to send your way. So I will be in touch. Elder Verna, what can I say? Thank you so much. The songs, your words of wisdom that you shared with us today is just invaluable. We don't have any words other than to say thank you for allowing us. You know, it takes humility for even to allow people into your space, and allowing us into your space and allowing us to learn about your culture is the first step that we are willing to take. And we will always be on that journey as long as you continue to allow us to be on that journey. And we hope we can do that for generations to come. And the change that we are looking for, like I said earlier, decolonizing is a journey. It takes a lot of patience to be able to get that. But as long as we continue to be on that journey, I am hopeful, like Elder Claudette said, you know, you have to hold on to that hope. And as Muslims, that's one of the things that our faith teaches us. When everything goes wrong, the only thing you have is to hold on to that hope, knowing that the Creator will never burden you more than you can bear in so many ways. And when you answered that beautiful question that was asked, how do you cope? You know, I was thinking, how do you actually cope? But your answer was so beautiful, and very powerful. Someone must have been praying for you. Someone is looking out for you. And that is the Creator. That is the ancestors who were here before you. So thank you so much for being here once again. And I wish everyone a lovely evening. And hopefully we will see you again. Do not forget to donate. The email address has been shared, and if you forget the email address, just Google us. You will find us somehow, and we'll be more than happy to connect with you. Thank you, and have a lovely evening.
Miigwech. Thank you.
Miigwech.
Thank you.
Thank you.